Welcome to the Pittsburgh Sports Reporters. Tim Benz here from 105.9 The X and the X Morning Show, streaming live right now with Mark Madden, also from 105.9 The X. You'll hear him at 3 o'clock today, and David Todd on 970 ESPN. He'll be on at 4 o'clock. Obviously, the big topic today, the Penguins, they're up 2-1 in their best-of-7 series against the New York Islanders, but based on a lot of the media and fan reaction, guys, it doesn't feel that way in the sense there's a lot more complaining about how the Penguins have gotten to up 2, down 1 in this best-of-7 series.
As well there should be. If they were playing a more experienced playoff team, if they were playing a better team, they would be down 2-1. This is why you get the number 1 seed. So you can make the amount of mistakes the Penguins have made and still be up 2-1 simply because your opponent is inferior. Look at the 2 key moments in yesterday's game that led to the Islanders' comeback. Chris Kunitz with a soft dump cross rink that started the sequence that led to Tavares' game-tying goal, which was a great play. Skate, stop, screen, shoot, score. Tavares is going to do that sometimes, but if Kunitz gets it in deep, the play never generates. The goal before that, the tying goal. Mm-hmm. Morrow with a blind pass in the power play. Eaton cheats in. How do you give up a shorthanded breakaway when you're up 4-2 in a playoff game?
Was the second chance on that power play that was a semi-breakaway? The second time in that same shift.
Just absurdity after absurdity. They've done it 2 games in a row now. That's how they lost game 2 on Friday. They were idiotic, and then they came out and were more idiotic yesterday, just happened to get away with it because of a big effort by Sidney Crosby.
Let me ask you guys this, Mark. You said this is not a great matchup for the Penguins. You say they're playing the worst team in the East, but are the Islanders actually the worst team in the East? You look at Montreal right now, Ottawa, you think about the way teams are playing. Is this also a bad matchup for Pittsburgh?
We're trying to invent this being a tougher series.
But we never
than
tip
it
the
is.
hat to the other guys. Never do it.
Well, in this case, they don't deserve it. They're a first-time playoff team. They have very few good players. I mean, thank God a waiver wire pickup was on the ice for overtime yesterday. That's the kind of guy they have to put out there. In fact, what a shrewd move by Ray Shero. He waved Brian straight, knowing he would take that overtime penalty all those weeks later.
We talk about Ray Shero's foresight. Got to give him credit for this one. That's looking way down the line. What did you guys think of that penalty? It's gotten so much reaction on the internet when it comes to how people have glommed on to the opinions of Jeremy Roenick and Mike Milbury. In my opinion, it was a penalty. He was hauled down from behind. He had his right skate kicked out. It was a penalty. If it's a penalty,
it's 2 hands on Sid's shoulder.
Well, if it's a penalty that happens in the first period and it results in a Chris Kunitz power play goal in the first, we're not complaining about it. If the tone shifts of what is or is not a penalty in overtime, well, all right, but not to that degree. I still think it was a penalty.
Well, first off, Milbury and Roenick just don't like the Penguins because Milbury and Roenick got their brains beat in by the Penguins their whole overrated careers. That said, they done their job because the fans talked about what they said, and we're talking about what they said. It was not a soft penalty. It was definitely a penalty. However, the one caveat I will throw in there, how would Penguin fans feel if that was Simone Dupre getting that penalty in overtime, hauling down John Tavares? We would be going crazy. I wouldn't be, you wouldn't be, David wouldn't be, but the hoi polloi would be.
At what, 3:30, 3:24 left? Is that when Jonathan Tavares just got mugged? Was it Doug Murray, I think, that hit him? There was a play where Tavares got wiped out along the boards.
I didn't feel that was as clear-cut a penalty as the straight penalty on Crosby.
But my point being, that would be the reaction that you're talking about.
Exactly.
Late in the third period because it could have set up a power play
the
opportunity.
penalty, no Penguin fan is going to argue that. That was a clean call. He got his stick in the guy's skates late in the game, and the Islanders had a chance to, take the lead there late.
I'll just pose this question straight out. Do the Islanders win one more game in this series and force it back to Long Island, at least for Game 6?
No.
I found myself thinking, after Friday night's loss, there's no way this group of veteran players, no way the most talented team in the East, maybe the most talented team in hockey, there's no way they could be this stupid again within the context of this same series. Then they came out yesterday and were just that, maybe even stupider. So I think the Penguins will probably get it together and win out.
You do? Okay.
Yeah, I do. I think they'll win this series in 5 games, my original prediction. And I think after this series, they'll exhale. I think they were scared to death of the first round coming in because of what's happened the last 2 years. And I think they'll start playing the kind of hockey that put together a 15-game winning streak during the regular season. Some irony there, by the way. They played playoff-style hockey to win 15 straight games in the regular season. Now they're playing anything but playoff-style hockey.
So you don't think it gets back to Long Island? You don't think it gets back to Long Island? I do. I think they get one more based on the way the Penguins are playing. I think the talent disparity is so much between the Pens and the Islanders. That's why they've been able to overcome that stupid play you were talking about. They did this against the Flyers. Last year's Flyers team was better than this year's Islanders team to the point that they could take advantage of the Penguins over the first 3 games and exploit them, and that's why they were able to get up 3-0. I still think
and
the
that's
Islanders,
why you need the number 1 seed.
Right, exactly, and that's why I think this gets back to Long Island for at least a Game 6.
Tim, how much are you putting on Dan for this?
I think there's an inability for him to get them to play the right way, and I don't know why that is, but it is.
To Mark's point, how can they do it for 40 games, the last 40 games of the regular season, and they can't do it now?
I'll tell you how. Because there is no such thing as an unpleasant moment in that locker room. They are more concerned with having a happy family than they are winning. They don't realize that, but that's just the way it plays out. I think Dan's job should be on the line in these playoffs.
I think it is.
No, I don't. I think he's back no matter what.
So wait, you're saying nobody's in there saying the hard things? Nobody's giving hell in the locker room?
I don't think so, no.
See, I think
I know
it
the
is.
coach isn't.
I think it is, Mark, because Shiro put so much into this team and made this the perfect looking team.
They will never have a better chance to win the Stanley Cup than this season.
Right. So if they don't, isn't Shiro mad at somebody? And some of these guys are going to walk on their own as free agents, and if he has to reconstruct the team in a similar image.
Well, no, I'm not saying Dan isn't the man for the job. I think Dan's a brilliant coach.
I think Dan's a very good coach.
But if you don't get at least to the Stanley Cup final, this team is built to make at least the Stanley Cup final. The only team in their class in the National Hockey League is the Chicago Blackhawks. If this team doesn't make the Stanley Cup final, at the very least, then you have to ask some hard questions like, would an unfriendly disciplinarian get more out of this team? Is the 2 superstar model ever going to pay off again? Will they look at that? I don't know, but I think they need to. Then again, maybe they'll just win the Stanley Cup and render all this moot.
Well, you brought up the Chicago Blackhawks. The Chicago Blackhawks series feels to me the way I thought the Islander-Penguin series was going to feel, in the sense that I have no doubt that the Blackhawks are going to win that series. I still think the Penguins are going to win their series, but even though it's 2-1 and Minnesota forced one to overtime, I just feel like the Blackhawks have that series a little bit more tight than the Penguins do.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I think people in Chicago are pretty uncomfortable. You go lose that game. The first game was a lot closer than people expected. They had one easy game in their 3. Pens have had one easy game.
But the Blackhawks are playing playoff hockey. The way they're playing against a team like Minnesota, that kind of hockey is going to come good. In fact, we talk about the Islanders being a tough matchup. They're not. Minnesota's a tougher matchup for Chicago than the Islanders are for Pittsburgh.
But if somebody plays grinded-out hockey against the Penguins, doesn't that feed into what the Penguins should and want to be doing, and maybe that is a better matchup? Somebody who plays wide open, let's skate at them hockey. The Penguins, like you said, they're
been
dumb.
proven
They're
time
dumb
and
enough.
again.
They're not smart enough to figure it out. If somebody's going to grind it out with them, the Penguins are going to match up better.
Well, that's why Ottawa in the second round, which could easily be what happens for the Penguins, would be a perfect
Now looks
matchup.
great. Looks
because
great,
Ottawa's not capable of opening the game up,
Right.
especially with Spezza still out.
On the power play, that has saved the Penguins to a large degree. They had 3 power play goals. Of their 13 goals so far in this series, 6 of them have come with the man-up opportunity. But at the same time, the power play has hurt them on 3 very specific occasions. The 4-minute opportunity that they had in game number 3 on Friday, an awful power play at the end of the second during this past game, and then they resulted in a shorthanded goal in the third period, the Okposo shorthanded opportunity where he scored. It seems to be like the power play is saving them, but at the same time, it has let them down substantially.
Here's what they need to do on the power play. They need to stop worrying about placating egos and get Paul Martin out there. Paul Martin is not
In
one of
place
the top,
of?
I don't really care who. You need Martin and Letang out there, which they had in overtime yesterday.
Yeah.
That'll cut down the shorthanded opportunities against because you have 2 defensemen out there. And Paul Martin is not one of the Penguins' top 5 offensive threats, but he is the best guy at distributing the puck at the point. As in, the overtime goal, a good shot fake, get it down
Great
low to
shot
Sid.
fake. Yep.
Sid makes the move, opens up space for Cooney, goal. But it all started with Paul Martin.
So then maybe do you put Martin as the quarterback on the point, have Letang reassume the role that he used to have before Ginla got here as the guy who rows down the left boards and tries to one-time the puck? Do you maybe go with that and put Ginla on the bench even though he's been so good at it? Because they're forcing that play all the time now.
Either that or I don't use Letang some of the time.
I'm with you on Letang. Let me ask you this.
Letang doesn't hammer the puck on goal like Iggy.
Nobody doubts that Letang's a great player. Did he have a good game yesterday?
No,
he
didn't. But there's a reason for that, I think, too. You think that you can't play that guy too much, but they lost faith in Dupre early because he was responsible, at least in part, for the first two goals.
Rightly so, right?
Well, right, but if you dress a defenseman, you got to play him. You only got 6.
He's on for 4 minutes. He's semi-responsible for 2 goals.
Then hope it doesn't happen again,
Right.
and tell everyone who's out there with him to be aware that he's out there.
Is he done, by the way? Is he seen his last 2?
Wow, no, I mean,
2013
he replaced England, who wasn't very good in game number 2
I got to
at
be honest,
all.
as bad as Dupre was yesterday, England's performance in game 1 made Dupre look like Bobby Orr in his
Game
prime.
one or two.
Game 2, excuse me.
Yeah.
But getting back to Letang, he played too much. He played 33 minutes. Martin played 31 minutes. And you think those guys can carry a burden, but 33 minutes in a playoff game is a lot different than 33 minutes in a regular season game. And I think Tanger just got frazzled. I think Paul Martin got frazzled.
On that topic, Brooks Orpik being out, Jack Capuano went out of his way during the live TV interview to reference this, how important it was in their mind to work from behind the cage as often as they could when they had the puck in Pittsburgh's offensive end. Orpik coming back, does that eliminate some of that ability for the Islanders to do so, and can he perhaps just get some of these guys away from the cage so they don't whack at loose pucks in front of Marc-Andre Fleury's feet 4, 5, and 6 times over?
One thing I like about the way the Islanders have played, and I will give Jack Capuano a lot of credit for this, they've stuck to their game plan. They're putting pucks in the blue paint and following them up as much as humanly possible. Will Orpik help in that regard? Sure he will. Is he going to play 60 minutes? No, he's not. I expect the Islanders to continue with that game plan. Doug Murray's done good in front of the net.
Doug Murray's been good.
But nobody else has been good in front of the net.
You're right. He's been good.
Like that first goal yesterday, people blaming Fleury. The puck's in the blue, and the Islanders got 3 or 4 whacks at it.
Right.
How can you blame Marc-Andre Fleury? Is he supposed to clear his own crease while he's on his back?
Well, Fleury had 38 saves? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah,
the
38
saves in game number 2,
Yeah.
and he had 20-something, 28, 30 saves something yesterday as well, and some of them were high-quality saves. Things got worse after the score looked like it got better,
Yep.
and the score got better only in large part because Fleury made as many saves as he did.
Well, in game 2, the same thing. He made the saves early to make that 3-1, and then we all know the Penguins got outplayed in that first period in game 2 when they were up 3-1. Fleury was excellent.
Game 2, I understand the criticism of Fleury because the winning goal was a bad goal. You know, he got lost coming back to the puck off the backboards. The first puck off the backboards, and by the way, it's another thing the Islanders doing consistently, putting that puck off the backboards, especially in Pittsburgh where the backboards are livelier. But that third goal, the tying goal in game 2, the defenseman got to help Fleury out on that bounce off the backwards. Fleury has to come out and cut down the angle.
Yeah, he was unlucky.
That's a big part of his game. So, but yesterday's game, people blaming Fleury, that's insane. You don't know what you're talking about. Is he supposed to cover the guy in the slot too?
You clear him out and then go back in the cage.
Is he supposed to make the smart play inside the blue line too? I mean, you know, those were 4 pretty good goals the Islanders scored. Might he have stopped one? Yeah, he might have. It would have been a great save, but he made other great saves too. And I got to get back to some of the mistakes the Penguins made because Brendan Morrow made that, blind pass on the power play that led to Okposo's shorthanded goal. Didn't they get him specifically because he was a guy who wouldn't make that play? Because he's a veteran who knows what he's doing? I hate to heap anything on Morrow or Iginla, and time will tell during their tenure in Pittsburgh, but when a great player, a veteran, doesn't have a Stanley Cup ring, sometimes that's not coincidence. Sometimes they didn't do enough during their tenure with their previous teams to earn the ring. Now, I'm not visiting that upon either of those players, but I will say this. Everybody felt sorry for Ray Bourque, who went to Denver like a $2 hooker and stole a Stanley Cup on somebody else's work. Okay? I saw Ray Bourque play against the Penguins in 2 semifinal series and against the Oilers in 2 finals, and he stunk in each of those series. He was a big reason the Bruins never got a Stanley Cup. Now, I can't visit those sins on Morrow and Iginla, but Morrow got to make not yet, right? Morrow got to make a smarter play than that. He's got to know better than that.
Well, what I don't understand is there have been a lot of people, I heard this a number of times, complaining that Sid has thrown off the chemistry. I don't understand how Sid coming back throws off the chemistry of anybody but Pascal Dupuis and Chris Kunitz for the most part at even strength anyway, and those guys continue to play well. Sid coming back should have nothing to do with Brendan Morrow throwing that pass. Sid coming back should have nothing to do with how the 6th defenseman plays. Sid coming back should have nothing to do with how Gino is playing, unless we're talking about the power play specifically.
Yep. I mean, generally we all agree with that. Sid absolutely has to be on the ice. But the obvious
Get
question,
5 points.
If somebody doesn't know hockey, and they say, you say the
and
Penguins,
most of you don't.
and you say the Penguins played the best game maybe they've played all year in game 1. They won 5-0. Sid didn't play, and he played in game 2 and 3, and they've played the 2 worst games they've played in the last 3 months. How do you explain it?
But the variable doesn't vary what's being varied.
Well, not only
I'm
that,
just
not only that, too.
That's what they're going to ask. So the question is,
But it's-
how do you answer that question?
What are they supposed to do? Scratch Sid?
Well, that's the other part about it is you follow up on these conversations with people. Well, I think Sid came back and threw off the chemistry.
Sid won the game yesterday.
So what do you want to do? Scratch
Sidney
him?
Crosby
No, I don't
won
want
the
to do
game.
that.
Well, people are idiots. People don't know. In fact, I feel embarrassed to even talk to you people out there. Sidney Crosby's the best player in the league. He's the best player in hockey. He won the game yesterday. Chemistry is the most overrated thing in sports because it gives idiots a chance to try to figure out why things aren't working when really it's very tangible right in front of their eyes, but they're too dumb to figure it out. Chemistry is absolutely meaningless. Talent matters. Hard work's kind of overrated, too. It's talent and intelligence. That's what wins in the Stanley Cup. Hard work ranks third. Chemistry's not even in the equation.
Last thought, David.
Who's in the lineup the next game? So let's say everybody's healthy. Is it Tanner Glass sits and James Neal's in there? Do you play Sid with those guys, or do you put Kunitz back on the second line? How do you approach Game 4? Sutter's not been good in the last couple games.
They're going to stick with, I think, Kunitz and Dupuis with Sid.
It's what Sid wants.
And
Do you think they should?
He's playing the best, and they play well with him. So
I think the best lines are
Iginla
would be Dupuis, Sid, and Iginla, Kunitz, Malkin, and Neal. The problem with playing Sid, Cooney, and Duper together, if everybody's available, is then either Neal or Iginla has to play left wing, and neither of them's good at it.
that's going to do it for us. Pittsburgh Sports Reporters today. Check back with us next week. We'll do this every Monday. Thanks for tuning in. Mark Madden, David Todd, Tim Benz.